All right, everyone, we should be live. Let's make sure that's actually the case. I think I'm going to be live on Rumble because, chat's working, but we've always got to make sure. We have 8 news topics to cover today, some of which are more important than others, but they're all important enough to put in a live stream. Let me refresh this, make sure what we're working with here. Yeah, okay, we're live on Rumble. Good. By the way, I do have a new debit card coming, which is linked to several accounts that I have, including StreamYard and Rumble. I've already emailed Rumble with regards to this, but the payments did bounce because, of course, the new number is not going to be the same as the old number. That means that I don't know exactly over the rest of the month if my live streaming ability cross-platform will be shut off. If there's going to be a watermark on the videos, I hope not, but we'll see what happens. So I am getting that together. A new card has been mailed, so we'll see how long that takes, and then I have to pop everything back in. It's going to be a fun time. I hate fucking having to do this sort of shit. Everything should be automated for me. I should never have to answer mail or anything. Everything should be automatic. Maybe Yang has a point. Anyway, for those of you watching on YouTube, pinned comment above in chat and cross-platform in the description. Look at that huge, hideous black blob there. That's the Nazis trying to rebuild their swastika. They've been paneling over some of our art as well. So please continue the red and the yellow into that territory that you see there. I will be doing that myself a bit later. And we have a little bit of repairing to do because, again, some things have been defaced. This is why we were attacking them in the first place. There were no problems with our next door neighbor in Africa until they started to try to take over our territory. I don't know if they were trying to build a bigger swastika or just some art. We went out of our way to go around their creations. There's a nice dragon that they made there, and I guess a zombie ripping its own face off, and the ant face and shit. We didn't destroy any of your art, but we're going to push back your swastika further. We have firepower on the order that you could never even conceive of it. It'd be a little bit like the D-Day invasion at some point, because I'll do a live stream just to fucking spite you, and we'll figure it out. But yeah, start clearing out that black blob there. Just continue the red and yellow tiling throughout their area, and if somebody wants to repair the peace out brick thing there and some of the other art, that would be cool. We are driving them back. We definitely have the upper hand simply because of sheer numbers. I think I'm going to have to do more, though. I think I'm going to have to call up I'm going to have to call up the militia at some point. And hopefully they'll contact me and we can come to some sort of peaceable terms so they can have their giant swastika, but we need to establish a border of some kind that we won't go beyond. That could be done. We're already at peace with the Brazilians and with the libertarians down in Southeast Africa. No problem with the various Ukrainian and Russian people that are on the platform. But anyway. Matt Clubbing, why does the sound never work for me on your live streams? That's got to be a problem on your end because I've never heard anyone say that before. Adam THM, are the economic numbers for August so bad that the Biden administration is massively pivoting to MAGA bad? That's one guess. Yes, possibly. We'll be getting into a Biden speech in a moment. Yeah, we start paneling things in. I'll do a little bit more right now, just for shits and giggles. Keep in mind there is a CAPTCHA on there, but some people have automated systems. They do the thing. By the way, randomly defacing the big black blob means nothing. Only paneling it in with our red and yellow will actually be meaningful because otherwise we have to panel it in a second time. Kyle Miller, who approved the speech and setting last night? It's like they want his approval rating to fall. Yeah, I'm giving more than even odds that Biden's approval does not get helped by his speech yesterday. Just to be clear. Anyway, we'll get right to it. There's a WKYC Channel 3 upload of this speech. Link in the description. Not archived because it's just a YouTube link. 21,000 people watched it, so considerably less than will watch this fucking live stream, just to be clear. And you may not be able to see the downvotes unless you've installed one of the add-ons, one of the extensions for multiple browsers. You can get it for Opera, Chrome. You can get it, I don't know, some people probably still use Edge. I don't know. I'm sure you can get it for that. To see the downvotes, Right now, 2,700 downvotes and 281 upvotes. This is pretty characteristic of Joe Biden's Banana Republic speeches. It's about 10-1 downvotes. There's a reason why YouTube decided to hide the downvotes. It's not just because of Brandon being a failure, but that was definitely one of the reasons. We stand on guard for Xi. How do you do your book covers? Well, in the old days, for CreateSpace/KDP, I would download a template and then I would, edit it. I would format it. Can't do that anymore. The new templates that you can download off of the KDP site, as far as I've seen, do not work. They have to be reformatted. Like for hardcover, it's going to be a bitch for me to figure out how to release hardcovers. And I've got full-length works that I myself have personally compiled, expanded forwards, illustrations, literally everything else. They're literally ready to go. And I can't do anything with them because it'll take an inordinate amount of time. I am thankful that I downloaded probably every permutation of the template sizing up to 400 or so pages for the 5x8 format. So I don't have a problem. I can just go back through and take the older covers and put in the new information. So, the details on the back, the title, etc. I can do that myself. If you did not do so, you're up shit creek without a paddle, because their new format literally doesn't. If you take the template from their official site and you make a cover and you put in, again, the official template has been turned into a PDF, any platform, it doesn't matter which one you use to convert it. You can convert it yourself if you want to. You pop it in, it will not be proper format. It'll cut off, it'll be the wrong trim, it'll be half of the picture won't show up, etc., etc. I don't know. I guess they're trying to dissuade people from doing self-publishing. Certainly with their new rules with regards to derivative works, they've made it harder. That being said, KDP has improved in multiple ways. So it's a trade-off. For somebody who already has the templates, it's perfectly fine, namely me. I have a feeling most people don't have those backup files that I have. Gerald Armstrong, Biden looked like he was speaking from the gates of hell last night. Yeah, we'll get into that. Anyway, first news story. Watch. President Joe Biden gives primetime speech on battle for the soul of the nation. This was meant to be an address to the nation. It was effectively just a political speech. It's pandering for the midterms. He's reaching. And he had Marines behind him, which could be a conflict of interest for those poor saps because they were literally in the backdrop of a political speech. He should be panned for that. In fact, there was one CNN anchor that brought that up and was like, hey, this speech has nothing to do with American togetherness or unity or something. This is effectively a campaign speech for the midterms. Why are there military members in the background? Was their question. It's a pertinent question. It's been panned by leftoids, even though it's pertinent. Quite literally, with military rules, with military decorum, it's pertinent. They refuse to acknowledge that fact. He's got like the red light behind him, and he's talking about how a significant proportion of the United States population are fascists and evil and must be defeated. It effectively was a wartime speech, which is uncharacteristic. I mean, going back all the way to the Civil War, I don't think that you would find a speech similar to it. You'd have to go back to the middle of the 1800s. The concept that the United States is at a civil war or that MAGA populism is fascism, et cetera, is clearly wrong, number one. Number two, if anyone approaches fascistic rhetoric, it's Joe Biden. Be against your neighbor. Ignore the economy, ignore the border, ignore crime, ignore everything else. Just focus on the fact that the person with the MAGA hat next door might be a bad person. That's basically what the speech boiled down to. People were comparing it to 1984 and V for Vendetta and other dystopian films because of the stark similarity, really, with the presentation of this speech. I do not think that this will do him any favors. In fact, when I look at Alzheimer's Adolf's speech and the fallout from it, it seems to be predominantly negative, including from some liberal commentators. They're like, what the hell is he even doing? Some people were even comparing it to Trump, saying, effectively the messaging is similar to the us and them Trump thing. The problem is, even if you perceive that as being real, and to some extent that's true, to some extent it's not. The problem is that Biden campaigned on and won, honk honk, on the concept of unity. Well, he even points it out in the speech. Well, I'm a president for all Americans. I'm not just the president for Democrats or just for Republicans, but then you're taking a third or 40% or thereabouts of the population, the majority of Republicans at this point, and a significant proportion of independents, and telling them that they're bad people for what they believe in. That's not a unifying position. It's not a unifying speech. This is basically a speech that's made because they do not have any other platform to run on. The only thing that the blue anon conspiracy theorists have at this point is MAGA bad, Orange Man bad, Ma conspiracy theories, Ma insurrection, et cetera, et cetera. Where's your platform for inflation? Where's your platform for crime? Where's your platform for the border crisis? Where's your platform for your freewheeling and sending huge amounts of money to Ukraine while people are hurting domestically? They don't have one. They can't run on these things. Democrats know this. And so they're trying to astroturf the tough guy mentality of the dark Brandon horseshit cringe meme as though it was realistic and anyone really took it seriously other than the people at the Midas Touch or the Lincoln Project, which is funny because they still pretend to be Republicans. Nobody takes it seriously, Joe. Sorry. Shoot groomers. Just was Rammstein Wednesday night in Philadelphia. City sucks, but the show was amazing. Not a fan of Rammstein. Liz is, though. She likes them. Violate the magistrate. Attention, everyone. The judge and DOJ used WhatsApp to get the warrant signed. Says it above magistrate's signature. Document safety, my butt. Yeah, I have heard about that, but I haven't seen corroboration. I do need more details. So if somebody could DM me on Twitter, some proof of that, that would be hilarious. The Grizzly. Watched it with the Tim Pool stream. I wonder who thought this was a good idea. What group of gaggle fracks in suits said, oh, let's just rile up half the nation that's already incredibly alienated. That won't backfire. Yeah, exactly. I think this is a strategic mistake by the Biden administration. Again, you're effectively making the kind of speech that typically U.S. executives only make in the context of a foreign army that we happen to be going to war with or something. So you think of the invasion of Iraq, Saddam, the invasion of Afghanistan with, Al-Qaeda, the Taliban, any of the other invasions throughout time, Korea or something like that. That's the sort of speech you would expect from that context. Biden, for some unknown reason, appears to believe that it's a good idea to aim that at a significant proportion of the domestic population. I don't know how well that'll do. Anna Meg 30. All he was missing was a Sith robe, and we would have had Palpatine's speech after he took over the Galactic Republic. Lol. Doc Holliday. Delusional rantings of an old dementia patient. Yeah, it did seem delusional. Although it was more coherent than most of his speeches, they must have doped him up twice on amphetamines beforehand. Friendly Neighborhood Sawyer. Have you seen the My Son Hunter trailer? Thoughts? I haven't, though I have been linked it. The Grizzly. Looks like Google found a way around the censorship Creole. I'm going to find new ways around Google's fascism. Yeah, you'd think that MAGA was a literal terrorist movement with militia and everything else. Lifecock. I'm going to see Meshuggah in Philly soon. Philly sucks. Meshuggah is awesome. I don't know if I've ever heard anything by Meshuggah. Let's see here. Just a sec. I am watching Pixel Planet as people panel it in. Again, link cross-platform in the description and as well at top of chat if you're on YouTube. Get rid of that big black blob there that when you go to that particular link, you'll see. Panel it in with the red and the yellow. We're pushing the Nazis back out of our territory. I see people are repairing the Peace Out bricked up thingamabobber there. I would be doing that right now, but I've got to talk and read news. I think Pixel Planet's probably more entertaining than some news topics. Violate the magistrate. Apologies. I meant it's on the affidavit PDF download. Oh. WinXP SP1. What was your favorite operating system? Thanks for the content. Well, Windows XP would be up there. Windows 7 was fine. I'm thinking about getting into Linux or something like that because Windows just keeps nerfing itself and becoming less usable. The only problem is, I mean, I'd have to have probably I'd have to have 2 operating systems or something. Because for some of my work, I have a feeling I have to use Windows. Like, I don't even think Apple can use some of the shit that I use. That's fine. If there's a learning curve involved, this tech boomer, I'm sub boomer when it comes to tech. My parents can use a smartphone better than me. I'll have to figure it out. Scott Hamilton. Biden actually said MAGA horses. Lol. So be it. Nay, nay. Mark Giudetti. Comparing Biden to Palpatine is extremely insulting to the Sith. Yeah, he's more like Jar Jar Binks as far as his coherence goes. Next story. In May, this is by Eric Schmidt, we filed a landmark lawsuit against top-ranking Biden admin officials for colluding with social media companies to censor free speech. We have already received documents that show their cozy relationship, and now we're demanding more. Yes, indeed. This is a mega thread here. You can go through it, but they do have, in some cases, somewhat redacted paperwork. It looks like the U.S. government has been directly colluding with big tech to censor private individuals, U.S. citizens, on their sites, pertinent to their constant concern, their paranoia with regards to more Russian disinfo and things like that. The Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency reached out to Twitter, Google, Meta, and Microsoft following the botched rollout of DHS Disinformation Governance Board. They have several documents here and whining about the fact that people were criticizing the Disinformation Governance Board for being the unconstitutional bullshit that it was. The Deputy Secretary at Treasury sought to connect with social media platforms and influence operations on social media. A White House official was even concerned about parody Fauci accounts and coordinated with Facebook to take them down. The CDC also proposed a monthly debunking meeting with Facebook to help them censor free speech as well as regular be-on-the-lookout calls with major social media outlets. And it goes on and on and on and on here. And the problem is that when you have direct coordination, it goes even a step beyond what I had mentioned. What I've mentioned before is the idea that social media firms, video hosting, Twitter and stuff like that, should not be able to censor U.S. users for anything outside of U.S. law because they are taking taxpayer money in order to fund things like weather updates, USGS alerts. They're platforming, the politicians for which people are constituents. The politician is using a public platform as a soapbox, then people who are their constituents at the very least should have the ability to interact with that positively or negatively. The fact that they would say something that is deemed to be disinformation is completely irrelevant under the First Amendment. It's completely irrelevant under Section 230. That's my personal belief. But when there is a direct coordination, that is that the government is explicitly telling these companies or asking them, requesting that they remove certain material that is not illegal, that involves U.S. citizens, under the guise of fighting disinformation or propaganda or whatever. That is an explicit violation of the First Amendment. It's not an implicit one like I read. When I look at the First Amendment in 230, I say it's implicitly violated by the fact that a taxpayer would be shut out from interacting with something their senator or their governor posted simply because the site determines that they're problematic, even though they have broken no law. I believe that implicitly violates the First Amendment. I think that's a pretty good read on it. This is explicit violation. This is direct coordination. It's what Klobuchar pushes for. It's what's been pushed for by Biden and others. It can't be more cut and dry. Sebastian Monroe. I noticed red and yellow in Wisconsin. Keep going, clankers, and reclaim the dairy state for clankdom come. Clankers around the world unite. Yeah, we've also claimed a shit ton of New York State, Delaware, parts of Virginia, and Washington State, I believe now. We're spreading like a cancer. Scott Hamilton, Biden actually said MAGA horses. Oh yeah, I read that before. Sorry. I lost track of where I was because the format here is not the greatest. Civic Nationalism, 1776. CNN actually altering the image color in real time was something to behold. They didn't think we would notice. This will affect the midterms. Yeah, if you're one of the people who thinks that the cringe Dark Brandon thing is actually cool because you've got the IQ of a turtle, probably makes you more likely to support Brandon and the Democrats. I think for everyone else, it just looked divisive and weird. The Good Stuff. Thanks, Sticks, for reading my super chat to watch The Good Stuff. Unlike CNN Plus, I do in fact have The Good Stuff. Clank. Sebastian Monroe. Speaking of horses, I know you can't ride a bike, but can you ride a horse? They can keep balance as long as you can. Also, you missed my previous chat. I think I just got to it. Yes, I could probably ride a horse. Probably be easier than a bike because there's, 4 feet or hooves there instead of just 2 wheels. Bicycles make no sense. Why didn't they just make tricycles? And you can put a basket or some shit on the back or the front and carry stuff. It'd be more efficient. Aaron C., I think you were exactly right when saying Palin lost due to ignorance of ranked choice voting. I do think it's a flawed system, though. We'll see what happens in the general, though. I think that she will prevail in the general. Jack Handy, Khrushchev, we will bury you. Biden, hold my prune juice. Someone else definitely has to hold it for him because his hands probably shake a little bit too much. The Grizzly, I think I found the Creole. Use the underscore key instead of the old parentheses key since the algorithm caught on. Trump is innocent. Biden is a traitor in chief. Scott Hamilton. People fail to realize social media is the U.S. government. At a minimum, the letters of understanding from back to 09-ish. It's definitely paired with them. Liberals have completely sold out, and apparently they have no problem with the U.S. government explicitly and directly coordinating with tech firms, supposedly private companies, to censor people for lawful behavior. They have completely sold out to the system. Dwayne Healing, go Linux. Been using it for more than 20 years. Hit me up if you need help. I probably would. Sebastian Monroe, thank you for catching my first. Also, Gorbachev died. Best thing he did was end the Soviet Union. Yeah, definitely. Good dude. There's a reason he wasn't given a full state funeral by Putin. Doc Holliday, that's an insult to my pet box turtle. Yeah, so you're a pet Mitch McConnell. Yeah. Next story, Molly Hemingway, FBI is meddling in election and Americans are saying enough is enough. I happen to agree with the basic concept. Molly Hemingway, the editor-in-chief of The Federalist, so this is a MAGA publication, just to be entirely honest, said she lost all faith in the FBI when it comes to the investigation into former President Trump's handling of classified documents Wednesday on Fox News Channel's Special Report Political Panel. This is a disaster for the FBI, she said. The very last people on earth who should be trusted in any dispute of this nature is the FBI. We'll be talking separately about one of Trump's very important statements the other day on this particular topic. People in D.C. can pretend like these leaks and court filings are anything different than what we have experienced since they began their war against Trump, but I think most of America says enough is enough and they need to stop. I don't know that most of America thinks that, but I have a feeling that there are more Americans that are saying enough is enough than that particularly support this. Unmedicated individuals will look at Russiagate, the tax filings, Pissgate, etc., all of the other phony non-scandals in the Trump administration and say, well, there are a lot of similarities here now, aren't there? And again, as I pointed out in the previous days, the FBI was exposed as deliberately politically partisan in the Hunter Biden case. That's why Thibault is out, etc. It's been exposed as politically partisan with Russiagate, with the Steele dossier, with Sturzak and Lisa Page, who were fucking each other, and that's hilarious. And if you understand that the FBI can be politically partisan, there's no particular reason looking at the scope of the current witch hunt to believe that that's not politically motivated too. It's as simple as that. I mean, it's not really a hard thing to understand. By the way, we've got almost 4,000 people watching live at the moment. And we, of course, have a chat on Rumble. Cenk Uyghur's Sweaty Gunt. Debate Nick Rekieta about who is the better grifter. Yes, I am on the list for the grifties, along with our cat. Well, we have 2 cats, but they'd have to share the award. They look similar, so I guess people think that it's only one of them. Unfortunately, there are 2 of them, and they fight constantly, occasionally waking the baby up and often waking me up in the process. I wonder why I look like I'm aging more these days. It's not the baby. The baby's perfectly fine and well-behaved. It's the fucking cat. Skycloud Rain. Hypothetically, if states seceded, would UN interfere or U.S. allies in the EU? I know Ron Paul is a fan of secession, and I don't know why. He's written a lot. I oppose secession. I think that reforming a system is better than attempting to create a new one in an overcrowded world where there is no more fallow land. I love it when people compare the concept of secession like nowadays to 1776. Most of the North American continent was if populated at all, sparsely populated at the time. There was infinite amounts of room for anyone and their mother to go out into the hinterlands and trap and hunt and fish. Most of the interior wasn't even explored. It's apples to oranges. Everything's been settled now. There aren't many fallow parts of the world anymore, and the few that exist, I mean, you don't want to cut down every last tree because then you kill off your own species. It's totally different. It makes much more sense to create a better system using the tools that we have at our disposal. I refuse to believe that the Republic is going Byzantine and going to collapse and it's doomed and all of these black-pilled things. I think that that is throwing the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak, and it's horseshit. As for the UN, I don't think that if a state seceded, they would need to interfere, because then you have a technical state entity that you can fight. U.S. military is very, very good at that. What they're not good at doing is fighting asymmetric warfare. Wasabi, hi Sticks. If I found a channel on YouTube that has informed me so much on China, and I thought you should check them out. They're called The China Show, but used to be ADV China, but rebranded recently. Interesting. So The China Show. The good stuff. I accidentally chugged Turkish coffee yesterday when trying it for the first time. Got a mouthful of grounds. I am really uncomfortable with the political rhetoric lately. Does Trump's second term equal civil war or reform? He would reform things. He did in his first term as well. However, there would be substantial leftist social alienation. The alternative, of course, is you get some neocon or a Democrat in there, then a significant proportion of the population that comprises populism and pro-liberty rhetoric, they're socially alienated. So there's, I mean, you just have to be pragmatic at that point and say one of these groups knows how to manage an economy and the other one doesn't. And that's really all it is about. The fucking cat, I'm making sticks go gray. Yeah, I mean, literally, the cat's going to make me get gray hair at some point. I'm just going to dye it platinum. BW, I have a taste for self-punishment, I guess. I made the mistake of watching Vaush's reaction to the speech. You should have heard him spanking the monkey to it. He seems to think it's a precursor to arresting Trump going after MAGA. He wouldn't actually like that. Keep in mind that he is a grifter. He wouldn't like it if the people that he pretends to dislike for visceral reasons went away, because he wouldn't have anything to bitch about. And that's the same for all of these people. It's like when Biden in his speech praises the neocons, really, but the true conservatives, the non-MAGA Republicans. Only a few years ago before Trump, you were calling them the devil. You were calling them Nazis. You called them everything you'd call MAGA Republicans now. You didn't want them to succeed. You pretended at least that you didn't want them to succeed. And then at the end of the day, they would get together with a backroom deal, throw pork barrel politics bullshit at each other, and then they would hammer out some neoliberal quasi-reform that would make them all rich. This is why MAGA occurred. It happened as a reaction to the fact that the system wasn't working. That's the whole fucking point. But unlike Occupy or the Tea Party or the Ron Paul Revolution or any of these other things, MAGA actually had staying power, and it achieved the top rungs of government. That's why they're so cut up about it. Fucking moron. Dr. Ron Paul, it's noteworthy that no major network, NBC, ABC, CBS, carried Biden's speech. I didn't know that. The media won't bet on a losing horse. Everyone needs to relax about his speech. It comes from a position of weakness. I agree with you on the latter part there, by the way. So, yeah, the FBI is meddling in the election, mainly by not deciding whether to indict or not beforehand. That points to probably not going to indict. But they don't want to say that to the public beforehand and exonerate Trump. My goodness, that wouldn't be good, would it? Next story. Trump tells court that classified material should have been expected in presidential records found at Mar-a-Lago. I see so much astroturfing over the last few days about the fact that there were classified materials at the Mar-a-Lago. Whether they were declassed or not doesn't mean that the cover sheet that says top secret or whatever or sensitive material magically goes away. Trump did not want to destroy presidential records. To be clear, that would have been a no-no. It would have caused repercussions. What else did anyone expect? Dude, the inventory filing weeks ago told us that there were classified materials taken. What's the only thing that's at hand that matters is whether the material had been declassified by Trump prior. If it was declassified by Trump while he was president, he can have those materials. And any kerfuffle with the National Archives has to do with storage. It does not have to do with the Espionage Act. It has to do with the Presidential Records Act, and he would not get charged with a crime because there is no crime. It is not a crime at all. Further, he can invoke attorney-client privilege over some of this stuff. I think that, and I analyzed this morning, I have a feeling that some of that was put in there specifically as sort of like a landmine for the FBI should they show up, so that they would automatically be seizing things that were actually legally protected. Whoops, big mistake, dude. Peter Watkins, hey Sticks, where can one find some old biometallic strip thermostats? Asking for some Californians. You'd probably be able to find them on eBay. If you know what you were looking for. You might try an antique store. You do it straight up American Pickers style stuff. Go out to some farm somewhere. Hasn't been updated since 1960. They might have a couple. Violate the magistrate. WhatsApp proof and DM to your Twitter. Okay, I'll take a look at that. Thank you. Renard Muldrake, when Make America Great Again is the least American thing to do. Up is down and down is up. Yes, war is peace and slavery is freedom. Always remember, under Biden, this makes sense to some people. Punk shock rock. Grifters need Trump, so he'll never see a cell. Yeah, I mean, if Trump was in jail, what would they have to complain about? They would complain about his latest prison. They would complain about the fact that he's still allowed to make prison letters, I guess, or something like that. It's a threat to the democracy that he be allowed to communicate with the outside world. I guarantee that they would take up that line. So, yeah, I mean, Trump is, it's not really that big a revelation, but he's telling them, look, yes, they're presidential records. Of course, there are classified materials there, but I declassified them. So what the fuck are you so concerned about? It seems like the only recourse that they have at this point is bitching about the fact that he didn't return them to the National Archives in time, even though they went behind his back while he was already cooperative on the issue. That's not a crime, to be clear. He will not face any charges for that, which is why I suspect they're coming out and insinuating that they won't bring charges or not bring them before the midterms because they don't expect to indict. And that would definitely influence the midterms if they were to come out and say, well, no, Trump's not going to be indicted. He didn't do anything illegal. He improperly stored records, but, we've repatriated them and it's not against any law. It's just a federal sort of regulation. It has nothing to do with the legal system. It would spark outrage among leftoids, and it would demoralize the shit out of the Democrats. Joe Biden's dentures. If Trump is cuffed live on CNN, what happens? Mass protests, which will immediately be co-opted by feds and turn violent. Unfortunately, that is what would happen. Leave me alone. LaoY87 equals Serpenza equals ADV China equals China show. Oh, Serpent Z is a South African who moved to China, and ultimately their ADV China documentary is even admitted by the CCP shills as good in its coverage of China's best qualities. Skycloud Rain, I agree. Civil war today would be nothing like the 1800s. People think it would be tanks and jets roaming. They won't. There'd be mass mutinies everywhere. People would leave to protect their family. Yeah, a lot of people, you think that the average soldier or cop wouldn't want to go home if they had any capability? They would desert, most of them. Skycloud Rain, the economy would come to a halt. Energy sector alone would fall. Tanks and jets need fuel to run. It would be a nightmare, societal collapse. It wouldn't be societal collapse, but it'd be damn fucking terrible for everybody. For MAGA, for liberals, for the young, for the old, black and white, gay, straight, etc. You get the gist. Which is why we should avoid such things. I think that the system is capable of working the way it's currently formulated with some tinkering. I do not believe in secession. I do not believe in, the need for a present revolution or something like that. If you're going to have a revolution, it should be ideological. Look at what Bannon has managed to do. He's a one-man army. He's subsumed tens of thousands of fucking precinct situations on the local level, controlling local elections nationwide as one fucking person with not that great a budget, to tell the truth. He's got a few dozen people that work with him, and he's managed to completely overhaul the political situation in multiple states. One person. Look at what Scott Presler does. Yeah, Scott Presler goes all around the country, cleans up trash sometimes too, and registers people to vote. How many the fucking tens of thousands of people has he registered at this point? He's one fucking goddamn person. Now he gets invited to meetings with people in Congress on a regular basis. Good for him. Lancer 737, splitting up the country wouldn't be bad. People in the US and EU military want a reason to invade and wreck us. Ashton the Slytherin pushes for splitting, also not voting, and that MAGA is worse than Antifa. Sounds like a moron to me. The Grizzly, do you think the LA grid starting to fail is a precursor to nationwide blackouts? If so, what happens if sections of the US power grid start failing and we get state-mandated power downs like Cali? That would be difficult for all of the NIMBYists. They think that we should use less electricity, but not when it affects them. If they have to have an on-day, off-day for one of their power outlets, they're really going to complain about it. Meanwhile, those of us who were raised poor will say, oh, fuck, one less desk fan. How sad. Why a license plate spat has sparked ethnic tensions again in northern Kosovo. Yes, apparently, and I talked about this fucking weeks ago, there are still tensions going on in Kosovo over fucking license plates. Yes, in Kosovo, Serbian issued license plates for the people that speak Serbian there have been respected. They had no problem with it. They've decided to change the way that they do things. I'll just read through a little bit this. Kosovo won independence from Serbia in 2008, almost a decade after a guerrilla uprising against Belgrade's repressive rule. Mostly true, although it's a little bit more complex than that. So we're definitely written from a Western, a NATO perspective. Serbia, however, still considers Kosovo to be an integral part of its territory and rejects suggestions it is whipping up tensions and conflict within its neighbors' borders. Belgrade accuses Pristina of trampling on the rights of minority Serbs. Ethnic Serbs account for 5% of Kosovo's 1.8 million people, with ethnic Albanians making up about 90%. Kosovo has for years wanted the approximately 50,000 Serbs who live in the north to switch their Serbian license plates to ones issued by Pristina as part of the government's desire to assert authority over its territory. So it's an ethnic struggle, effectively. Ethnic Serbs have long refused to recognize the authority of Kosovo's institutions in the north, venting their hostility by refusing to pay Kosovo's power operator for the electricity they use and frequently attacking police who try to make arrests. So the fact is that Serbia and Kosovo are on the brink of an ethnic conflict yet again because of fucking license plates. Is there no maturity in either of these nations? Are their leaders that fucking dumb? Apparently they are. Let's kill each other over license plates. Can't you figure out something else to do? Why don't you have one? Why don't you just create one sovereign licensing authority over automobiles in your two countries? Because they are split up. They are independent at this point. And have like something on the border, like a peace monument where people can go and register their fucking license plates. And half of it has like the Serbian flag and half of it has the Kosovan flag on it or something like that and get a rapprochement going. Why can't you have a tear down that wall moment instead of antagonizing one another? But it's the Balkans, so why am I asking these questions? I don't even know why. Jesus Christ. Can you imagine if license plates led to tension in another country to that point? I mean, the closest thing the United States has is the Gadsden flag license plate frame is now being offered in Florida, and people pretended that that was a sign of far-right Nazis or something like that. And it was hilarious because I think 7 states already offer Gadsden flag license plates, but oh well, whatever. Gary Jean, I have a Rock Island Armory M206. It's a snub-nosed revolver in .38 Special, a clone of the Colt Detective. Fairly cheap and good quality. Yeah, .38 revolver would be pretty cool, actually. I don't know which ones I want to get when I get back to the U.S. Eaters of Dead. Did you hear how Zelensky asked China to rebuild them after we have given them close to $80 billion? Yeah, I mean, he wants money. Don't you? If you thought there was a chance of getting billions of dollars for absolutely nothing, you'd probably want it too. Wasabi Sticks, ADV China, is 2 dudes that lived in China and were some of the first YouTubers to make vids on China. And they love the people and hate the government and are a good source on how China operates. I'll take a look at it. So yeah, I guess there might be a war over license plates in the Balkans. This is the last fucking goddamn thing that we need now, by the way. Post Ashley on Rumble. I'm trans and wanted to assure you that you're not transphobic. The majority of my friends are called transphobic. A badge of honor. Trans allies are the worst. Thank you. Anarcho Igloo on Twitter. Yeah, I have no problem with people that are transgendered. I just don't think that taking kids to drag shows is appropriate, regardless of, by the way, whether there's any transgendered people there. I don't want to see children sexualized, and I think that children who are too young to consent to anything else intimate should not be making those wide-reaching decisions. I fail to see how anyone can possibly claim that this is a bizarre opinion to have. It's sort of like on gay rights. I don't care if a person's gay or lesbian or whatever. I don't care if they're swinger either, by the way. They're bi, they're asexual. Nobody gives a shit. It's a passé issue at this point. I don't care if they get married. It's a property contract. I supported gay marriage for a very long time. But if you want little kids, like 10-year-olds, to go to a pride parade and then there's a giant penis float, I think that's inappropriate. And I have a feeling that if a bunch of people who were marketing themselves as straight had a straight float and there was a giant mechanical penis going in and out of a giant vagina or something, people would consider that obscene and they would consider that weird. They may not think even that it should be illegal, but they would think it was weird. They wouldn't want their kids going to it for not without good reason. It's the same fucking shit. No, I'm not. I'm not transphobic. I don't give a shit about how people dress, who they screw, etc. I don't see why it has to be turned into a major identity. Like, I don't go around saying, "Oh, I have straight pride." Okay, I'm straight, super straight specifically. That's not part of my identity. I've got my own shit to do. The fact that I'm not interested in rubbing my dick on other dicks is not a defining feature of my life. It's just something that happens to be part of my personality. The Sticks Hex and Home Builders. We want to start the job, but the tools have escaped. Yeah. Miami Cuz. What is fascism and why is MAGA considered fascist? Fascism is the fusion of corporate and state power. It's basically the opposite of what MAGA actually pertains to. It's much more in line with what Klobuchar has in mind, actually. Yeah, Patrick D has a good idea. A float with Brandon falling off his bike. That would be hilarious. Now we got to talk about John Fetterman. John Fetterman's reasons for opposing voter ID are an insult to Black Americans. It's true. Yeah, he opposes voter ID. Long story short, he's running against Mehmet Oz. And like many Democratic candidates, he keeps claiming that the idea of needing a form of ID to cast a ballot is wrong. It's evil. The problem is if you don't require a form of ID, then if you give some general generic name and you happen to be early in line, you can probably get away with taking somebody else's vote. And you haven't given any form of ID, so I don't know that you can even necessarily get caught unless somebody's got a sharp eye out for what's happening. The problem is that only U.S. citizens who have attained the age of majority and are not felons in most states, by the way, should be voting. If you don't have any form of ID system in order to make sure that's the case, you're going to have a leaky voting system. It doesn't matter if it's only 1 in 10,000 votes. The fact is that there are races that are literally considered, that are literally settled by 2 or 3 votes. It's not common, but it does happen. You can see a major election. It's like the old poem. What was it? For want of a horse, I think it was called. For want of a horse, the rider was killed. For want of a rider, the squad was killed. For want of a squad, the battle was lost. For want of the battle, the war was lost, or something like that. Things can be amplified. One little thing, butterfly effect, I suppose, applies. One little thing happens. So one particular state is decided by a few hundred votes. And there just happens to be a few hundred fraudulent votes. So the state flips. But it's basically a 50-50 election, and the president of the United States therefore takes office because of a few hundred votes. We've seen this before. We saw it in the 2000 election, Bush v. Gore. Florida was decided by a phantasmagorically small number of votes to the point where you would have an inevitable endless recount unless the state Supreme Court got involved and they gave it to Bush because at the time he appeared to be ahead. Whether or not that's actually legit and technically legal remains to be seen. It's basically, you're allowed to question that election, so I can be quite frank. In my opinion, it's anyone's guess as to who technically won the presidency in 2000. And because of that fact, yes, for want of a nail, the shoe was lost. Yeah, Professor Naps, I see what you're posting there. You've got the right version. I think after battle, it was war was lost. And then for want of a war, the kingdom was lost or something like that. And but you get the point. Even a little bit of fraud is a problem. He's trying to make it a racial issue. How is it harder for somebody who is black to get an ID than someone who is white? It's not, quite clearly. Mark Gidetti. The reasons for the issue in Kosovo is that NATO is trying to start a war to bait Russia into helping Serbia, so NATO gets a pretext to invade Russia. False. That would never happen because it would be World War III, nuclear annihilation, and we'd all die. These people like their toys. They don't want them all to glow in the dark, only some of them. Grevin Share, I tried to be scared of Biden's speech, but then I remembered that half the Democratic Party leadership has one foot in the grave. Well, they're the most scary because they've got nothing to lose. Imagine the worst possible scenario is you've got someone who has their capability to press the little red button and they just don't give a shit about their own life, so they might do something crazy. People, by the way, aim this criticism at Putin. Well, he's getting older now. He wants another hurrah. If he starts losing, he might nuke the world. Why are these same people not aiming that same criticism at Joe Biden, who constantly threatens the U.S. population with F-15s and shit like that? Drennan just went grocery shopping, listening to you on the phone full blast. Clank. A good choice. The last. Sometimes I think the rhetoric in Raid was to try to provoke a response to push gun control and prove the rhetoric. January 6th was supposed to be worse. Yeah, it's possible. By the way, cross-platform right now, we've got almost 6,000 people watching live. Excellent. So fuck John Fetterman. Long story short. Next story. Texas sends buses of migrants to Chicago for the first time, dropped off at the train station. By the way, to prove that Fox News is controlled opposition, they continue to use the term migrants, which is the politically correct term for illegal aliens that is now in use. To be clear, if you enter a country and you're not legally entitled to be there, you're an illegal immigrant. You're not a migrant. You're not just migrating there for a job. Technically, in general circumstances, you're not supposed to be able to get a job. We just don't happen to have E-Verify. Thankfully, I oppose E-Verify, by the way. I propose building the wall bigger and better and expanding it much more and actually guarding the southern border. And then we wouldn't have a crisis needing E-Verify to violate the Fourth Amendment. 2 buses carrying migrants from Texas have arrived in Chicago on Wednesday night. The buses arrived at Chicago's Union Station at around 7:30 p.m., carrying migrants who crossed the southern border illegally. Then call them illegals. Fox minces words. I'm not going to fucking mince them, though. You'll notice that there's some consistency here that is lacking in elements of the so-called right-wing legacy media. An estimated 80 to 100 people were on the buses, including 20 to 30 small children. Many of the migrants said they were from Venezuela. But you got no clue. I mean, there's not a passport to check or any ID or anything like that. They're probably told by the narcos down there, don't bring any form of ID. Just say that you're from a convenient nation. I'm Panamanian. Yeah, I'm actually from Chile or Haiti or something like that. But just trust me, I grew up in Panama City. I've fucking been there for 20 years. Habla español. That's basically what's happening. So now Chicago is getting them. They've already done this with D.C., with New York City. Now they're doing it to Chicago. I think that Abbott and others on the southern border should double down or even triple down. Overrun these sanctuary cities with people that they will then have to care for. It allows people in those places to see that the crisis really is real. Imagine that you're in New York City or D.C. or something. You're nowhere near the southern border. You hear about this border crisis, but you're being told by the liberals that there's no real problem. There's no overflow. They can handle it. Everything's fine. Why do you hate these brown people? Why do you hate the huddled masses? But then all of a sudden, thousands and thousands and thousands of new homeless people show up in your community because they've been bused there. Well, there's a reason why Lori Lightfoot and Mayor Bowser and all these other morons are saying this is a racial tactic. It's evil. They're doing this as a political tactic and they're bigoted and wrong. Texas has how many fucking people, how many fucking migrants waiting there? Probably over 1 million at this point. Yeah, I think that you can afford to take some. And your population, your NIMBYists up in the northern blue cities can afford to see the problem for what it really is. On a microcosmic scale, they're not going to the border. They'd shit their pants if they were near the Mexican border. They'd be terrified. They're the actual bigots. They're the ones that actually look down their fucking noses at everyone if they have an accent. So I met people like that. You might notice that I don't really like them. NIMBYists are literally the worst, especially if they're from like the upper middle class. If they're like richer, it's like, okay, they're super rich. They're out of touch. They've got a gate around their house, not just the community. You can understand why they look down their nose at people. They're like a walking stereotype. But somebody is like, they've got a master's degree. They're a doctor or something like that. They make a decent amount of money, but they're not living in a true mansion. It's a McMansion. They're not driving a Porsche. They get a nice car or something, but they still look down their fucking noses at other people. They look down their nose at fucking hillbillies, even of the same race, by the way. Anyone of a different race, certainly. Anyone with an accent, someone from another, like some West Virginian shows up in Chicago and gets constantly ridiculed by these people. I just fucking hate these people. No matter how high my income goes, I hope I never become like them. Fucking morons. So yeah, Texas is busing now to Chicago. I'm sure that they will fit right in Chicago, though, because Chicago's already wrecked. I don't know why they even took the ticket from Abbott, because they're being offered for free. This isn't mandatory. They're being offered tickets. Why the fuck would you take up an offer to go to Chicago right now? It's more dangerous than being in Mexico City. I'd just go back to fucking South America. I'd say, oh, fuck. One look at Chicago. Half these people will self-deport. I guess that's the idea. Shark dentures. I agree, Sticks. An emotional psychological investment in the future should be required for leadership positions, like having kids. Leave me alone. One of 4 of David Koresh's surviving children is watching Sticks. No troll, FBI. Schumer investigation botched. Dad equals sucks government equals sucks worse. Interesting. And now we've got one last news story here. Oh, wow, we're making good progress over there on Pixel Planet. Definitely take that link, cross-platform, link in the description, pinned at the top of chat if you're on YouTube. Just fill in that big black area with the yellow and red tiles. Just continue the same pattern or build whatever the hell you want, I suppose. We're pushing their swastika back. The fucking Nazis keep trying to invade our area and getting owned over and fucking over again. I mean, how many times do we have to teach you this lesson, old man? Anyway, I was correct again. I've got a righteous victory to claim for Clankdom before I eventually go off to prep my mushroom soup for later. I'm making creamy mushroom soup, and it's filled with like all sorts of good shit. And I've got some bread. I make it really, really buttery and herby. You would like it, but you can't have it. It's for me and Liz. President Biden job approval. Link in the description. This is from RCP. And I thought it was funny. You remember many, many moons ago when I said that Biden had a soft approval floor, below which it tended not to fall unless something catastrophic happened. And that catastrophe, of course, was that people on the further left and certain single-issue voters started abandoning Biden in general and the Democrats possibly in general as well because they felt he wasn't doing anything. And so what exact date was it? His floor began roughly in January, so long ago. And it maintained goddamn almost completely linear for about 6 months. Then he began falling. Around the end of May, he begins falling to his lowest point, which is 36% approval, roughly. It has now gone back up to 42%. And this is an aggregate. So this isn't a single poll. This is the aggregated number. Single polls mean absolutely nothing. It happens to have stalled out and flatlined now at about 41, 42. That's exactly where he was during his old floor. He has simply returned to his old soft floor. He reabsorbed those same voters, several million people, mainly leftoids, because of the Manchin-Schumer deal, which may or may not go through, and because of other considerations that he's passed more recently. Student loans comes to mind, although, again, that was more recent and it's already flatlined, so I don't know that that had as much to do with it as the deal for, I can't remember exactly what they call it, the Inflation Reduction Act, which is really the Inflation Creation and IRS Expansion Act, but for some reason, left-wing voters want to expand the IRS so that they can get audited more, I guess, or something like that. It just happens to be at exactly the same level it was before. What is interesting, however, is that his disapproval has not returned to the old soft floor. It's returned to something intermediate between the old soft floor and the more recent, the harder ceiling with disapproval. His old was at roughly 53%. Again, this follows almost exactly the same timeline. You can see it graphically here. You can follow along, link in the description. It follows almost exactly the same linear trajectory for about 5.5 months that the approval did. But the disapproval recovery is far less than the approval recovery. What this shows me is that there are several points within there, because again, the new level is at about 55. Not at 53, about 2 points that have probably permanently abandoned Joe Biden. That's not really good because those are independent voters. I can't imagine the leftoids are the ones that are holding out. The approval recovery is twice as sharp as the disapproval recovery. What this shows us is there's a difference between people who were soft oppose and climbed back on board and people who were soft oppose but still oppose. Well, clearly, the economy is part of this. It's why it's almost exactly 50% of the same total. I think that's the half of the population that's more concerned about the economy than anything else. They're still looking at high gas prices. They're still looking at low labor force participation. They're still looking at the possible rising housing crisis, by the way, that's beginning, and other economic considerations. If you are more interested in gives me dat, in free money and handouts, you probably, you climbed back on the Biden bus, the short bus, that is. If you cared about inflation, like you had a job or something, you didn't. And that's why the two figures have deviated by almost 50% in that restoration of approval and reduction of disapproval, of course. By the way, please don't send any more super chats because I've got quite a few more here to get through. And again, it's going to be creamy mushroom soup night. So at some point, I got to start prepping things. JWT6577, not only going to Chicago, but going to Chicago at the end of summer when it looks like we might just skip fall and go into early winter this year. Ouch. Yeah, Chicago. Why would you want to live in Chicago? You got high crime, shitty weather. You can't go out of the house probably without a plate carrier at this point. I don't know why. Tomes 2789. Have you seen the assistant principal in Greenwich, Connecticut, who got caught refusing to hire conservatives and Catholics and who promoted subtle left-wing indoctrination of students? I did see that clip, yes. I'm not going to bother reporting on it, though, because at this point, teachers and professors being shysters with regards to that sort of thing, isn't it par for the course? I'd be more surprised if one of them was caught on film saying, yeah, secretly I'm conservative. Secretly, I actually voted for Trump in 2020. I just don't tell anyone. Musically assured destruction. I watched Biden's speech and I felt like I was being gaslit by an abusive partner. Yeah, or commanded to violence by a dictator, maybe. A really impotent one. J.S. McDurdy. If you want a good 38 or 357, I say get an N or K frame Smith & Wesson. You can buy old Model 10 police trade-in for about $300. I prefer the Model 28 or 66. Probably go with 357, in all honesty. Fire down below. Cerno said, after tonight's Nazi-inspired speech by Biden, hard to see how Trump doesn't get indicted. Your thoughts? That's quite a reach. Why would that lead to an indictment of Donald Trump? I think Cerno is putting two and two together where 2 and 2 doesn't exist. Nathaniel McLaughlin, I share your disdain for NIMBYist class. So tired of the virtue signaling. Marin and Tiburon inhabiting 60-something smug huffers. Lived by those types all my life. Sadly, they're not all 60-something. There are plenty of young NIMBYists, too. Like literally every one of the Zoomers that wants to destroy the energy industry to fight climate change. They would love more windmills. Try putting one up outside of their parents' apartment. See how long it is before they're carrying a sign saying not in our neighborhoods. The landlord harassment channel. Chi is safe if you're not dressed like a gang member. I don't know about that. There are some places there in Detroit and then St. Louis and others that I wouldn't want to go through under any circumstances. Maybe if I had 5 or 6 other people with me. Drennan, Sticks, any suggestions on attracting pollinators for my garden next year? Just plant lots and lots of flowers. Nicotiana always work. Yeah, Nicotiana are great. You'll want to plant them in fall, though. Just lightly sprinkle the seeds, till in the area, water them, let them come up, and they'll overwinter, depending on your climate, under the snow, and then they'll grow huge the subsequent year. You can plant them in spring, too. It's just easier to plant them in fall. And they'll self-seed to no end. Like after 3 years of neglect in the garden in Rutland, there's still Nicotiana there. Almost impossible to get rid of. It's an ornamental flowering tobacco, actually. It smells very sweet. Honeybees and bumblebees both love it. Hummingbirds like it as well, actually. Ruby-throated hummingbirds as well. Joker 1 on Rumble. The term migrant is used because birds migrate and almost everyone loves birds, except perhaps Alfred Hitchcock. I love birds, especially when they're roasted on a plate in front of me. I can't wait to make Parthian chicken again. That Parthian chicken recipe that I got off of YouTube is, I can't remember the exact channel, like Historical Tastings or something like that. Let me look that up. I'll give a shout out to YouTube. What was it? Tasting History with Max Miller. Yeah, definitely make the Parthian chicken there. It is extremely good. It is an excellent idea to make Parthian chicken. The meat falls right off the bones. It's got the perfect flavor. I would suggest the asafoetida that you're using, and you should use that, by the way. Don't sniff it directly because it is very, very strong, and you might get nauseated by it. I thought it smelled kind of like a more powerful garlic. The flavor, I assure you, entirely burns off into the meat and leaves a gentle, slightly sweeter than garlic flavor, I would say, behind. A little bit more savory and sweet. Michelle Bode on Rumble. Hey, Sticks, garlic is as essential in the kitchen as salt. Agreed? Yes, absolutely. Along with onions and basically every other herb. Cumin and basically any kind of green or seed that's aromatic and flavorful. Bay leaves are another thing. You won't notice the bay leaf flavor unless you leave it out, is an old saying. Moffat Life sent $1.99. Thank you very much. Yeah, literally get every herb and spice that you can. I want to have a massive-ass spice rack in the future. Like, imagine you have like a larder or like an oversized pantry, and you have herbs hanging everywhere, bottles of spices and stuff, and you have to make like creepy writing and hand write it. So it looks almost like witchy or like hobbity or something like that. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah, apparently there are a couple of trolls spurging out in a Rumble chat. Why is 666 good? Can't say one thing. LMFAO from Living Room Rumble. Hootis Goat, the retard's not done yet. Now, maybe I'll just stay on forever. I'll just keep the live stream going and people will be paying me to just literally broadcast the background, and then you can shit it up and, you know, have a good laugh. I wouldn't actually do that, but it'd be funny. I've thought of it before, like have a 24-hour live stream of like the backyard or something like that. I have a feeling that people would watch it. It might get more views than Joe Biden does. Not that that's saying much, to tell the truth. Spice Wars, says Oscar Gonzalez. Yeah, I want every spice and herb known to man. Like, I mean, I'll have to shop online, but the other thing is I'm a little bit OCD, so I would want to have them all in similar containers. And I've jarred up my own spices a few times. Like, we grew red basil the year before, you know, I came here to the Netherlands. It's probably still good now because I kept it whole leaf. And it's excellent. Red basil, by the way, is so underrated compared to its sweet basil compatriot. And I have no clue why more people don't use it. It's twice as potent. It's got a little bit of an acidic tang behind it that sweet basil doesn't have. I think it's delicious. I don't understand. Troy James, Sticks. I got 5 on it for you before inflation hits. All right, I should probably go offline here. We did hit 6,300 at peak. And got some trolling over on Rumble. No problem, though. To be clear to all the trolls out there, whether you genuinely dislike me or not, just trolling, I don't have a problem with that in chat. I don't censor anything. So, pound away, bother people. It's not like I don't do the same fucking thing and I'm not a hypocrite. That's about all.